Welcome friends to another Dune video. Today we look at Liet Kynes and how his legacy is passed on to his son. They both arrive at a Fremen area where they believe the village has been poisoned and many of the Fremen there have been horribly maimed and killed. Liet finishes the lives of those that would otherwise have lived in pain because the Fremen would consider them demons if they were alive otherwise. Even their water would not have been used. Liet picks out a disguised trail, and near the cistern he smelled a harsh, alkaloid bitterness, the unconverted water of life. It had been put into the water here, and then he saw an ornithopter had landed. A Harkonnen one, and both father and son began to plan how they would hurt the Harkonnens back. As the Fremen with Liet moved out, they all made the fish sign at the first moon. Liet was disguised to look like a water-fat village boy, and they would make the Harkonnens pay. Fremen informants working with the Harkonnens had studied crew assignments and route logs, so the Fremen knew who had done the poisoning. And a distrans bat landed on Stilgar's forearm. He gave it a bit of water and brought the cylinder to his ear. It told him a location for the Harkonnens. Later, and as we started with, the Fremen allow the Harkonnens to see two of them. A Harkonnen fired his lasgun at them, and the Harkonnens in the ornithopter land as they get close. As they pursue, one of the Harkonnens returns to the ornithopter, only to find a Fremen there who killed him, and as the book paints it, the sand around the remaining ones erupted. Human forms popped out of the dust, covered with grit, tan human silhouettes like animated corpses boiling up from a graveyard. And the Harkonnens were put down, as the Fremen had closed fast enough so the lasgun could not be used on them. Liet removed the eyes from one and bound him. The Harkonnens' water was not taken. Stilgar then says they'll perform a ritual so the Harkonnens' soul will never rest and cover their tracks after, so their souls will not follow them back to the Sietch. Designs to aid this were drawn in the sand, and Stilgar intoned a chant. One trooper who ran is said to be an offer to Shai-Hulud, and within a minute a worm came. Later Stilgar and Warwick go to a merchant of water, Rondo Tuek. The building they saw was connected by pipes and trenches. He confirms he has received their spice payment, and so gives them supplies for the return journey. But they're in the Arctic Circle of Arrakis and decide to stay and climb the nearby glaciers. Whilst they are there, they find a single footprint, and signs that others had been wiped out. They moved carefully and found a trail, and there was a hidden door, and then 4 camouflaged men emerged with weapons and forced them down the tunnel. The leader of the smugglers is revealed to be Dominic Vernius, and they are now his guests. They are smugglers, and Dominic reveals that he once worked for the Emperor, but now moves against him, and Stilgar and Warwick agree to help Vernius's smugglers' camp. Later, Liet and Warwick are camped together. They are taking equipment from a nearby weather station, and they discuss how they both must choose a mate. They both want the Nabe's daughter for a ruler, and later she asks for 2 days to decide. And then she lays down a test. Whoever meets her in the Cave of Birds first, she'll give herself to them. It's a meaner challenge. It was a test in which the Fremen youths proved themselves worthy of manhood, and so the Fremen friends raced. 2, perhaps 3 days faced them. They both switched from worm to worm, but Warwick reaches the Cave of Birds first. When he sees a boot print, he knows Frula is inside, and so he steps in, and she greets him as her husband. Liet arrives in time to realise he has failed. Liet did, though, return to the smugglers' Antarctic base. He wanted to be taken away from Dune, but before leaving he left the couple after trading on his father's name for fresh fruit. His leaving is treated as if he goes on a holy pilgrimage. He searched and found the smugglers. After not being recognised at first, he was taken to see Vernius and aids him off-planet on Seleucia Secundus. Liet says to them his outsider name is Waishi, and there Liet and Vernius meets Gurney Halleck, who has escaped from Gidi Prime and advises the smugglers on how to hide their trails. Liet sees how Seleucia compares to Dune. They're both harsh worlds, and it's in this moment he decides he must return home. When he goes, he meets up with Warwick again at the pole. Warwick observes he looks water-fat. They set off back to their Sietch, but see a big storm approaching, and so seek shelter. It's a Coriolis storm, or in Fremen, Hulasikaliwala, the wind of the demon in the open desert, is the translation of that. They seek a small outcropping. The wind whispered in Liet's ears. Electrical fields nauseated him, gave him a pounding headache, which would only decrease if he grounded himself well on the sand. They leapt from the worms, who dived into the sand for their own protection. The Coriolis storm was scouring the ground and howling like an angry creature. Liet could no longer differentiate between desert and sky, but the hole was deep enough for one person when they got there. Warwick says Liet must go in, as he is the son of Liet Kynes, that's the Fremen name for Liet's father, Pado. They debate, and Warwick says God must choose. They threw bone sticks and rated the throws with numbers, and Liet won. Warwick says Liet must take care of his wife and son. After the storm passes, Liet sees a figure still out in it, and rushes to see it's Warwick. The storm has torn off half of his flesh, and his friend's body also has additional damage. Warwick says, out in the storm he had a vision. Liet takes his friend back to Redwall Siege, where Warwick is treated. Warwick's wife wears the colour of mourning, and because he lived, men came to listen to him, and he enters a council of elders, and Warwick says he wants to take the water of life. All Fremen knew you could not survive this unless you were a reverend mother. Then he begins to preach that he has heard the voice from the outer world, the Liet Kynes, and says he must take the water of life to see the path. They give him the water to see if he is the Liet Kynes. So with many Fremen watching, he was given it. The Sardina says Shahulud will judge him and his vision. Warwick then says that he saw the hawk and the mouse, and that they are the same, and that they won't be able to control him. He says the Liet Kynes will come, but he will not be what they expected, and then the poison was too much, and he passed. Over time, Liet yearned for Fionnuala. 3 months passed, and then they were betrothed, and Warwick's young son also became his. Liet spoke to the neighbour about doing this first, as Fionnuala was not a spoil of war where a woman and children are taken on automatically. They exchanged vows, and the neighbour announced that they are married and united in water. After Liet argues with his father, saying the Fremen are not his test subjects, but people, Liet wishes Pado talk to him as a father and not a colleague. Pado accepts this and says his son sees more things than he does, and his son is his successor. Later, Liet Kynes sees how the progress of the rebirth of Dune is going, and in the cave he sees there are cracks in the cave that might affect the work going forward. These get worse, and there is a cave-in. Then we turn to Stilgar, who comes to Liet with information on his father, who died in the cave-in, and Stilgar encourages Liet to carry on his father's legacy.